Hi, I'm Scott and I like to play. Now, when I talk about play, I also like to play games, but I just like to play as well. Now, as a scholar, I can talk about play for a long time, but I only have about 10 minutes for this video, so I'm just going to get right to one definition. When I talk about play, what I'm talking about is the exploration of a boundaried space. So the idea is that there's some kind of space that you're heading out to, a physical space, a mental space, and it's got some kind of boundaries that have been put, but those boundaries are something that you can explore, you can cross, you can rewrite, you can mess with them. And I like to bring in concepts of play into games. In board games, one of the boundaries that we tend to play with is that we're all sitting at a table. But there's some games that have played with that concept. And I'm going to explore some of those games on this episode of Introspective. Hi there, this is Scott Nicholson, and this is Introspective. This is a series where I take little gems of inspiration out of games that I've played in the past, talk about them and connect some dots and get you to think about game design. And today I'm talking about play and specifically around playing with this concept of the table. My inspiration for doing this episode was a game by Friedemann and Fries, who's the same person that designed Power Grid. It's German, called Fische, Fluppen, Frikadellen. Now this is a game that you can't get in English, so if you want to get it, it's an older game, and you have to get it in German. But there's not a lot of language in the game. It's something that you can translate and work with it. And at the surface, this game is a fairly typical pick up and deliver game. So you have an island, and on that island there's little market stalls, and you go to the market stalls and you can buy and sell materials, and then there's some people that want certain combinations of materials, and you can fulfill those orders. There's a market that shows the prices of them that fluctuate, so it's your typical buy low, sell high kind of game where you're moving around an island. Now, what makes this game interesting? If you were to pick this game up in the store, the first thing you might notice that's a little surprising is it says it plays from 2 to 15 people. It's like, well, how does this game play 15 people? Well, the idea is that this game supports 5 people who are on an island exploring that island. But this game has a sticker on it, and that sticker says A, because there are also versions of the game that say B. And there's also versions of the game that say C. And if you want to play this game with 15 people, you need 3 copies of the game. Because what's going to go on is that each player is represented by a pawn, but if you have all 3 copies, then each player's pawn color is going to be a different shape. Each set of shapes starts out on one island. Now each island has a set of stalls, and it has its own market and its own goals. And what's clever about the game is the island also has docks. And so when it comes to your turn in the game, if you're running this for 15 people, you set it up at 3 tables, each table with 5 people. And then when you move onto a dock, you pick up all of your stuff and you carry it to one of the other islands and you sit down there. And then when it comes around to your turn, you enter on the dock with your goods, go in, make transactions. And then after you've bought and sold at that island, you can go back to a dock, get up, move to another table with your goods. Now, you're not allowed to look at the markets at the other tables before moving there. You just have to pick a table and go for it. And you have to take at least one turn before moving again. So you have to wait for your turn to go around. But you run this as a race. So the players are all you have to visit all 3 islands to win the game, because each island will have one unique combination of things that you have to bring to win the game. But what's interesting, so then you're going to look for opportunities to buy stuff cheap on one island and then take it to another island and sell it. But other players are trying to do the same thing, and they can mess up the market because they'll come over and they'll see there's a really rare resource that they have on one island, and you show up and you've got just a handful of them, and they're like, oh, I'm going there. And so then the players start all getting up and going to that island to go get that resource. So some of the interesting effects that happen is where if an island is relatively cheap in the marketplace and a lot of people are there, the turns go more slowly. So you can end up, if you're at a table that has now 10 people at it, you have to wait much longer for your turn to come around before you're going to get to act, as compared to at another table where there's 2 people and they're just going back and forth. So they're moving quite quickly. So that's something to consider, is going to a table where there's not a lot of people, because you're going to get to take a turn more quickly. But that live element, that breaking the rules, that 3 copies of the game turns what is a fine game into something that is unique and interesting and not like anything else that's out there. Myself and a couple friends were inspired by this concept and decided to play with the idea of having people move between tables when we ran role-playing games at a convention. So myself, Donald Dennis, and Kathy Carroll, each of us signed up to be a game master at a role-playing game during the same time slot at a convention. One of us ran a role-playing game called Toon, where everyone's playing cartoon characters. Another person ran a role-playing game called Teenagers from Outer Space, where everyone was playing a high schooler and many of the players were playing aliens. And so that game is about the wackiness of being a high schooler. And the third person was running a game system called Paranoia, where you are all in a post-apocalyptic bunker-type situation with a computer that's taking care of you. You're hunting down people in secret societies, and you're hunting down mutants with special powers, and you're both a mutant and in a secret society, so you're trying to hide all of this. And so we were all running these games at the same time at the convention, and then an alarm clock would go off. And when that alarm clock went off, everyone rolled a die, and whoever rolled the lowest was teleported to one of the other tables. So we had cartoon characters showing up in this high school with aliens and humans. We had teenagers showing up in the Paranoia world, some of whom were aliens who then had mutant powers, and we had Paranoia troubleshooters going into the cartoon universe where everything is wacky. So we started to play with these boundaries, and as the game went on, we brought the players together into one big massive final fight where they were in this metaverse taking on the game masters, and it was all chaos and playful. There's another board game I want to talk about that is very playful and very different from anything you've seen before, and it's called Spaceship Unity. Now, Spaceship Unity takes some concepts from live-action role-playing, and I'm involved a lot with live-action role-playing, and live-action role-playing games really play with a lot of these concepts as well, things like mega games and really big games where you're engaging with these big stories. But I'm talking mostly here about these sort of tabletop things. So Spaceship Unity is a game where you are working together to fly a spaceship. And the game is broken up into chapters. It's a legacy kind of game where you have episodes. So each book is one episode and will take you through the stories of this spaceship and what's going on in the spaceship. But before you start your stories, you have to put together some stuff. So you'll have these cards. So this card says, it will tell you, the game will tell you you need a service panel. And this service panel says silverware drawer. And has a little picture there of almost like cables and silverware showing in it. And on the back of this card, I'm not going to read it because I don't want to spoil it, but there are multiple tasks related to working with a silverware drawer. Now, you're not going to know what you're going to do with the silverware, and the game is going to have some challenges, many of which will be timed, where you have to do something quickly with the silverware in order to do something in the game with the spaceship. So the idea is that, oh, there's aliens coming, quick, you need to get into the service panel and rewire things. Well, you can imagine what you might do. It might be something like dump everything out of the silverware drawer and resort it back into the drawer to rewire things. So you have a silverware drawer, you have a vacuum cleaner, you have a container with things to throw in it. These are all scattered around your space to represent like a spaceship bridge. And then you get to points in the game where you might have one person over there doing the silverware drawer and somewhere else over there someone working with the vacuum cleaner as you're simulating the spaceship environment. So if that sounds fun, it is. If that sounds horrible, it is. I think I've explained it enough to help you know if it's something that you may want to explore. But if you want to explore something totally wacky, check out Spaceship Unity. I would love to see more designers create these playful experiences, create moments in games that are playful, that break our normal rules of how we engage with the game, get people to engage with each other in different ways, to create moments that are playful, that are fun. I try to do this in the board games I create. And so Going, Gone, for example, in that game, it's an auction game where each auction runs for 10 seconds, but instead of it being 10 seconds counted with a timer, one of the players counts from 1 to 10 out loud. But they choose how fast they're going to count. So they can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or they can count 1, 2, 3. They choose the pace at which they do, and that creates different environments. And that's this idea of playing with games. So I implore you, as you're making games, as you're making experiences, think about things to make everything a little bit more playful, because that's kind of what we need out there in the world today. So go play. Bye-bye. One of the pocket definitions, wow, that's a long word.